Jealousy is born from feeling, not always from intention. But love becomes real only when a man respects a woman's choice as much as he fears losing her. For years, Dante Ravieri looked Leah in the face and called her like a sister. But the night he saw her with another man, jealousy ripped through that lie, and the powerful Mafia boss who had denied her for so long finally lost control. Watch what happened next. Leah Vale had spent most of her adult life making herself useful in a house that was never truly hers. At 25, she knew the Ravieri estate better than most people knew their own minds. She knew which hallway window stuck in damp weather, which upstairs guest room got cold first in winter, which cook liked her herbs labeled in Italian and which one pretended not to care, but still checked. She knew where the silver polish was kept, which florist would send the freshest white roses without being chased, which deliveries needed to be signed for personally, and which men were not to be kept waiting if they arrived after dark and asked for Dante Ravieri. That last category had grown larger over the years. The estate woke before dawn, but Leah usually woke first. She liked the quiet before staff footsteps, before phones started ringing, before men with hard faces and expensive watches came in through the front gates and brought the wrong kind of silence with them. That morning she was already in the main kitchen at 6, checking produce invoices with one hand and stirring coffee with the other, her hair pinned up, her blouse sleeves rolled, and her mind already moving through the day's list. Breakfast for the house staff, linen order, new flowers for the West Hall, guest seating for the Morelli Foundation Gala, security adjustment for the side entrance because Carlo said the camera there had glitched twice in 1 week. And somewhere between all of that, a moment to breathe if she was lucky. Too early, Mrs. Bellini muttered, as she shuffled into the kitchen in house slippers and an apron, though she said that every morning and was never believed. One day I'll wake before you just to prove I still can. Leah smiled without looking up. When that day comes, I'll frame it. Mrs. Bellini snorted and reached for the coffee pot. You joke now. Wait until your bones start speaking. My bones already speak. They mostly complain. The older woman gave her a long look over the rim of her cup. Then take a day off. Leah kept writing. You ask me that like this house would survive it. The house would survive a fire. That doesn't mean it needs one. Leah smiled again, but thinner this time. Mrs. Bellini knew enough not to push too fast. She had worked for the Ravieri family longer than Leah had been alive. She knew what the house looked like before Leah's mother came to it and after. She knew what happened when Leah was 13 and her mother died in a hospital room that smelled like bleach and machines, and 2 late apologies. And she knew that Dante's late aunt, Bianca Ravieri, had taken one look at a grieving girl with nowhere safe to go and said, she stays. Leah had stayed. Not as a daughter, not as a charity project. Bianca had never allowed that language. She had given Leah a room, school fees, rules, structure, and the kind of careful protection that still leaves scars, because gratitude has a way of tying itself to helplessness when you're too young to fight it. Dante had been 23 then, already feared. Already carrying the Ravieri name like it had chosen him instead of the other way around. He had lived in the city most of the time, appearing at the estate in dark suits and disappearing again before Leah could understand why the staff seemed to breathe differently when he entered a room. Now he lived there more often than not. That was part of the problem. Leah set down the pen, checked the clock, and turned toward the pantry just as footsteps crossed the stone floor behind her. Not staff. Staff moved around kitchens with purpose or apology. The sound came slower, heavier, unhurried because it belonged to a man who had never needed to rush through his own house. She didn't turn at once. You're out of sugar packets in the East breakfast room, she said, reaching for another box. You said good morning to Bellini. Leah closed her eyes for 1 second before turning. Dante Ravieri stood in the kitchen doorway in black trousers, a dark gray shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, and the kind of tired face that only made him look more dangerous. His hair was still damp from a shower. A phone rested in one hand. His other hand was tucked into his pocket like he had all the time in the world. The trouble with Dante was not that he was handsome. Handsome was easy. Safe men were handsome. Easy men were handsome. Dante looked like something harder than that. Strong jaw, dark eyes that rarely gave more away than they meant to, shoulders that made doorways look narrow. Nothing soft about him except sometimes his voice when he said Leah's name. Good morning, she said. That's better. Leah fought the urge to roll her eyes. You're in a strange mood before 7. I've been awake since 4. That sounds like a choice. It wasn't. Mrs. Bellini quietly decided the kitchen had other corners that needed her more. Smart woman. She disappeared into the walk-in cooler with 2 cartons of eggs, and the expression of someone who had seen enough of men and women to know when leaving helped everyone. Leah took the fresh sugar box and crossed to the sideboard. Dante's gaze followed her, not in a crude way, not even openly, just enough. It always had. What time did you sleep? He asked. She didn't look at him. I'm not a child. That wasn't my question. Late. How late? Leah turned then, one brow raised. Do you want the exact minute? If you know it. I was doing seating revisions until 1. Dante's jaw tightened slightly. That was Marta's assignment. Marta entered the wrong guest code twice. So you fixed it? Yes. Instead of sleeping. Again, Leah said, setting down the box more firmly than necessary. I am not a child. No. Dante looked at her for one quiet second. Children usually listen when told to stop working. Leah hated the warmth that tried to rise under her skin at his noticing. Hated more that she still noticed he noticed. This was how it had always been with him. Not grand gestures, small impossible ones. You skipped dinner. You changed the florist. The east gate light needs replacing. Wear a coat. Don't take the side road after dark. Tiny acts of attention that would have felt like care if he had not spent years putting one word between them whenever the air changed in the wrong direction. Sister. Family. Safe names for unsafe things. Leah reached for the tray list to give her hands something useful to do. You have a 9:30 call with Naples, and if you're still standing in my kitchen at 8, I'm telling them you were defeated by toast. A shadow of a smile touched his mouth. Your concern moves me. My concern is for the kitchen schedule. Of course. He said it in that tone that made her want to throw heavy objects, like he heard the lie and accepted it anyway. Dante moved farther into the room and leaned one hip against the counter. The gala arrangements? Handled. The Morelli people changed the donor placement again. I changed it back. That got his full attention. Why? Because their update was stupid. Dante's mouth shifted again, almost a smile. And they took that well? They weren't consulted. For one brief second, he laughed. Low. Real. It changed his whole face, and reminded Leah why this particular form of suffering had lasted longer than dignity should have allowed. Then the moment passed. His phone vibrated once. He silenced it without looking. You're going tonight? He said. Leah's hand paused over the tray list. To the gala? Yes. That was not phrased like a question. She turned. I was already planning to. Good. And if I wasn't, then I would have told you to. There it was again. That way he had of stepping over every ordinary boundary without even seeming aware of it. Leah folded the paper once. You know, most people say please when they want something. Most people aren't paying for security, flowers, staff coordination, and a room full of men who will pretend they came for charity. She held his gaze. I don't work for most people. Something moved in his expression at that, gone too fast to name. No, he said quietly. You don't. For a second the kitchen felt too small. Leah looked away first, because she had learned long ago that if she didn't, he might say something in that lower voice of his, and then she would spend the rest of the day carrying it around like a bruise. She reached for her coffee, discovered it had gone cold, and drank it anyway. Dante noticed. Of course he did. That isn't breakfast. It's caffeine. It's not food. It's survival. He said nothing for a moment. Then, eat before 10. Leah almost laughed. What is this? A health campaign? He watched her with that maddening calm. A request. No, she said softly. It really isn't. Dante pushed away from the counter. Fine, then take it as an instruction. And there it was. The exact reason Leah kept reminding herself that whatever lived under the surface between them could never be trusted. He always came back to that in the end. Control dressed as concern. Protection dressed as right. He left the kitchen before she could answer. Mrs. Bellini reappeared from nowhere carrying basil and old wisdom. You two are getting worse. Leah stared at the cold coffee in her cup. That suggests there was ever a better. Mrs. Bellini clicked her tongue. There was, before you both started pretending. Leah looked up sharply. I'm not pretending. The older woman gave her a look so patient it felt insulting. No? Then why do you still go quiet every time he notices you forgot to eat? Leah turned away. Because everyone in this house has developed bad habits. By 9, the estate had fully woken. Drivers moved through the side entrance. Carlo checked deliveries. 2 men in tailored suits arrived for Dante and were taken straight to the west study. Leah handled flower placements in the downstairs hall, corrected 1 catering count, and spent 20 minutes on the phone with the Morelli coordinator, who believed urgency became more believable if spoken in a brighter voice. It was nearly 11 when Elena's message arrived. You're still coming tonight, right? Leah looked at the screen for a moment before typing back. Yes, unless your charity people set themselves on fire first. Elena replied instantly. Please come even if they do. Also, I may or may not have arranged for you to meet someone normal. Leah shut her eyes. Normal. What a dangerous word. She typed back 1 line. If you turn my evening into a setup, I'll ruin your shoes. Elena sent a laughing emoji and nothing else, which was answer enough. Leah slid the phone into her pocket and returned to the flowers. She had known Elena since university, from a brief strange period when Leah still believed hard work and scholarships and discipline might be enough to build a life entirely separate from the Ravieri world. Elena had gone into nonprofit law. Leah had come back to the estate after Bianca's health failed and then never fully left. That was another thing she tried not to think about too often. How easy it had become to stay, not because the house trapped her. Bianca had never trapped her. Even Dante, for all his impossible habits, had never directly ordered her to build a life inside his reach. But lives can narrow themselves around comfort just as effectively as cages do, and Leah had become too important to the estate while letting the estate become too important to her. That was the truth beneath all the rest of it. She had built competence into a home and duty into a language she could survive. And somewhere inside all of that, she had let one man matter too much. The first time Dante said, "She's like a sister," Leah was 17, and stupid enough to think the sentence had only embarrassed her because it was unexpected. Now she knew better. Bianca had hosted a winter dinner that year, the sort with too many candles and too many men who smelled expensive. Leah had helped carry coffee into the library after dessert. One of the guests, old enough to know better and bold enough not to care, had smiled at her over the rim of his cup and said to Dante, "You keep very pretty company in this house." Leah still remembered the way her whole body went cold. Dante had looked up from his drink, seen the man looking at her, and answered without pause. "Leah's like a sister." The guest had laughed and moved on. The danger disappeared. The room relaxed, and Leah had stood there holding a silver tray with a smile on her face and a crack opening somewhere in the center of her chest. Later that night, Bianca found her in the kitchen crying over nothing she could explain. Bianca, who understood too much, had not asked questions. She only stroked Leah's hair and said, "Men choose foolish words when they are afraid of wise truths." Leah had not believed her then. She did now. By afternoon, the estate had become all movement and pressure. Tailors came with Dante's evening suit. Staff checked guest accommodations. Carlo lost his temper over flower placement and found it again when Leah threatened to replace him with the gardener. Dante disappeared into meetings and emerged from them with the look he got when the business under the polished version of his life started showing teeth. Leah saw him only once before 6. She was in the upstairs East Hall, adjusting a table arrangement outside one of the guest suites, when he came around the corner with Raphael and 2 men she didn't know. All 4 slowed when they saw her, though only Dante stopped. His eyes moved from the flowers to her face to the cuff of her shirt, where a line of green from stem dye marked the fabric. "You changed florists," he said. Leah blinked. "What?" "For the downstairs entrance." She glanced toward the stairs as if she could somehow see the arrangements from there. "Yes. The old ones were better." "No," Leah said. "The old one overcharged because he assumed nobody noticed." Dante's mouth moved slightly. "And you noticed. That is unfortunately my job." One of the men with him, a younger man with a polished smile and watchful eyes, looked between them with the sort of curiosity that made Leah immediately dislike him. Dante noticed that too. "Your room is on the west side," he told the man without looking away from Leah. "Carlo will show you." The smile vanished. The man nodded and kept moving. Raphael remained where he was. Leah resumed fixing the flowers, mostly to remind herself she had hands and work, and reasons not to care where Dante looked. "You'll be late if you don't change soon," Dante said. Leah looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" "The gala. I know what time it starts." "Then why are you still working?" Leah stared at him. Raphael looked toward the window with saintly discipline. "Because the world does not pause while women put on dresses," Leah said. Dante took 1 step closer. "Not enough to touch. Enough to alter the air." "You should." Leah's breath caught for 1 ridiculous second. Then common sense returned. "What does that mean?" His gaze held on hers. "It means you do too much for people who notice less than they should." That was too close to kindness. Too close to something else. Leah turned back to the flowers because it was safer. "Go be late to your own event, Dante." He didn't move right away. Only when Raphael said, "Boss," in a careful voice did Dante finally step back. At 6:40, Leah stood in her room above the east wing with 2 dresses spread across her bed and the ugly feeling of doing something both foolish and overdue. She did not dress up often, not because she didn't want to, because there had never seemed much point. Most of her life happened in the Ravieri house, around people who either worked for her, answered to Dante, or had known her since she was half-grown and too thin for her own bones. Tonight felt different. Not because of Elena's ridiculous setup, not even because of the gala, because for the first time in a long time, Leah wanted one evening that belonged to her. One room in which she was not the girl Bianca took in, not the woman who managed the estate, not the dependable Leah who fixed problems quietly and disappeared before midnight, just a woman in a dress with the right to be seen as one. She chose deep green silk with a low back and simple lines, elegant without shouting. Her hair stayed down. Small gold earrings, nothing dramatic, nothing she would later accuse herself of wearing for anyone but herself. Still, when she looked in the mirror, she thought of Dante. That annoyed her so much she nearly changed dresses on principle. She didn't. The drive to the Morelli ballroom took 20 minutes. Leah insisted on using her own car instead of one of the estate drivers, and Carlo argued exactly as long as he dared before giving up in muttered Italian. By the time she arrived, the evening had turned warm and bright, the city all gold reflection and polished black glass. Inside, the ballroom looked as if money had been instructed to behave beautifully. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids, silver candles, small tables near the dance floor, and a wider crowd gathered around the silent auction displays. Leah spotted Elena almost immediately, waving from the bar with one hand and holding a champagne glass with the other like she had been waiting too long to start gossiping. "You came," Elena said, kissing her cheek. "And you look so good I almost regret introducing you to anybody." Leah took the champagne Elena pushed into her hand. "That sounds dishonest." "It is." Elena's smile turned wicked. "Come meet Julian." Leah closed her eyes for 1 second. "You really did it. I arranged a conversation. I did not arrange your future. That's still too much arranging." Julian Mercer turned when they approached. He was tall, clean-cut, maybe 30, with warm brown eyes and the kind of face that looked like it had never frightened anyone on purpose. His suit fit well. His smile was easy. Not slick. Not lazy, just easy. "Leah," Elena said too innocently, "this is Julian Mercer. He's on the Foundation's advisory side. Julian, this is the woman I told you about." Leah gave Elena a look sharp enough to draw blood. Julian smiled. "That sounded dangerous." "It usually is," Leah said. He laughed, and it was pleasant enough to take the edge out of her irritation. "Good. Then I feel properly warned. That should have been the end of it. A polite introduction, a few safe minutes, an excuse to disappear toward the donor table. Instead, Julian was normal. That was the problem. He listened when she spoke. He didn't interrupt. He didn't do the tiring thing some men did where they mistook her competence for invitation or her calm for challenge. When he asked what she did, and Leah said she handled operations on a private estate, he did not smirk or turn the answer into something smaller. He only said, "That sounds like running a small kingdom without any of the credit," and Leah laughed before she could stop herself. Elena heard it and nearly looked smug enough to deserve murder. The first half-hour passed too easily, then another. Leah found herself relaxing in slow degrees she had not expected. Julian knew enough about city politics to be interesting, and not enough about the Ravieri world to make every silence feel loaded. When he touched her elbow lightly while steering them away from a cluster of donors near the auction wall, the gesture felt ordinary. That alone nearly undid her, because ordinary had become a kind of luxury. By 9:15, the ballroom had filled. More men in dark suits arrived. More cameras, more eyes. Elena was pulled away by a board member she couldn't ignore, leaving Leah alone with Julian near the champagne tower and a display of auction jewelry that looked too expensive to be worn by anyone with a conscience. Julian said something low and dry about one of the paintings, and Leah laughed again. Real laughter. Unthinking. She felt it as it happened, and almost didn't recognize the sound as hers. That was when the room changed. Not loudly, not visibly at first. Just enough that the crowd near the entrance seemed to shift without meaning to. Julian noticed before she did. His eyes flicked past her shoulder, then returned to her face with a small, careful change in expression. "Friend of yours?" Leah turned. Dante Ravieri stood at the far end of the ballroom, with Raphael one step behind him, and 2 men at his side. He had changed into black from throat to shoes. No tie. Dark suit, dark shirt, and the kind of hard stillness that made strangers lower their voices without knowing why. He was not supposed to be there yet. The gala was not even one of his primary obligations tonight. He had a meeting downtown. She knew because she had arranged the car. He was looking only at her. No, not at her. At Julian's hand resting too near the bare skin of her back. Leah's whole body went cold. For one terrible second, Dante did not move. Then he started walking. Julian said softly, "Should I be concerned?" Leah's mouth went dry. "Possibly." Dante crossed the ballroom with the kind of control that looked more frightening than rage. People noticed him, and then noticed the direction he was moving in, and pretended suddenly to care very deeply about their drinks. Elena, halfway across the room, saw him coming and stopped breathing. Leah set down her glass. "Dante," she said when he stopped in front of them. He didn't answer her. His eyes stayed on Julian. Julian, to his credit, did not step back. Evening. Dante's gaze dropped once to the hand near Leah's waist. Take your hand off her. Julian blinked. Excuse me? Leah went still. What are you doing? Dante finally looked at her. What are you doing? The sentence hit the air between them like a slap. Leah stared at him. I'm standing at a charity event. With him. Julian straightened a little. Is there a problem? Dante looked at him again. There will be if you touch her another second. Leah felt heat rush into her face. Not shame, fury, humiliation. The kind that makes a woman want to either throw something or speak very, very clearly. Enough, she said. Nobody moved. Leah heard the room even through the music, the distant clink of glasses, someone laughing too loudly across the floor. The sudden careful quiet of people pretending not to watch. Julian slowly removed his hand. Dante noticed. So did Leah. That was the worst part, not just the public scene. The fact that men moved around Dante's anger, as if it were weather, and everyone else was smart enough to find shelter. Julian glanced at Leah. Do you want— No, she said, though she wasn't sure what she meant. No, don't leave. No, don't make this worse. No, don't ask me to explain a thing I still didn't fully understand myself. Dante's voice dropped lower. Walk with me. Leah almost laughed in his face. No, his jaw tightened. Leah, you are not dragging me across a ballroom because you forgot how to behave. For the first time, something truly dangerous flashed in his expression. Not violence, something closer to raw panic fighting control. Julian made the mistake of speaking into it. Maybe this conversation should happen later. Dante turned his head slowly. This conversation does not involve you. Leah stepped between them before instinct could finish anything stupid. It involves me, she said sharply. And I said no. That made him look at her again. Good, she thought. Look at me, not through me. Not past me, at me. Elena arrived then, breathless and furious. What is wrong with you? She hissed at Dante in a voice meant only for their little circle and failing. Raphael, still several steps away, made the face of a man who had predicted this exact disaster and disliked being right. Leah took one careful breath. Julian, give me a minute. Julian looked between her and Dante and understood enough to know the room had become something else entirely. Of course. Dante's eyes darkened at that easy obedience. Leah caught it and wanted to scream. Instead, she said, Balcony, now, before you embarrass yourself any further. She turned and walked. The cold night air hit her face the moment she stepped outside. The balcony overlooked the city in strips of white light and black glass, with music from inside dulled by the closed doors. She moved 3 steps away from the entrance and spun around. What the hell was that? Dante stopped in front of her, broad shoulders tense, every line of him hard with restraint. Who is he? Leah stared. That's your answer? It's a question. No. She took 1 step toward him. That was a public claim you had no right to make. His face changed by 1 small degree. No right? That's what I said. Her voice shook now, but not with fear. You don't get to stand there and look at another man like that when you spent years making sure I understood exactly what I was not to you. Something moved in his eyes, but he did not answer, so Leah gave him what he deserved. You called me like a sister. The words landed like a blade. Dante's mouth thinned. Leah laughed once with no humor in it. Do you remember? Or was it so easy for you that it disappeared the second it left your mouth? Leah, no. She folded her arms because the night had suddenly become too exposed. Do not say my name like it changes anything. You said it over and over, every time the air changed. Every time somebody looked too closely. Every time I forgot my place for 1 stupid second. You handed me that line like a locked door. Dante said nothing. Good, she thought again. Let him sit inside it, Leah went on. Because if she stopped now, she would never say any of it. So no, you don't get to walk into one room, see me with one man, and act like I betrayed something sacred. There was never anything sacred. There was only your lie and my silence. For a second, the city seemed to go still around them. Then Dante said very quietly, I am jealous. The honesty of it shocked her more than denial would have. She stared at him. You do not get to say that to me now. I know. No, I don't think you do. Her throat tightened, but her voice stayed clean. Because if you understood what that sentence costs, you would have stayed away from me years ago. A short, humorless laugh left him. You think I didn't try? The answer hit her hard enough to make her blink. What does that mean? Dante looked back through the glass where Julian still stood near Elena, both of them pretending not to watch. It means tonight is not the first time another man near you made me want to break things. Leah felt her pulse kick. That was too much truth too quickly. Her first instinct was to run from it. Her second, far more dangerous, was to ask for more. Instead, she said, then why keep calling me that? His jaw flexed. Because it was safer. For who? He looked at her then. Fully. Directly. Without the ballroom or Julian or any of the rest of it between them. For you, he said. Leah almost laughed again, not because it was funny, because it was exactly the kind of answer he would give, the kind that wrapped itself in care and expected the wound to feel grateful. No, she said. For you. Dante went still. You kept me close, Leah said, quieter now because the anger had moved deeper. You noticed everything. You watched me like I mattered. You protected me like I belonged under your roof. But the second any of it became real, you reached for the safest lie you had. Her eyes burned. Do you know what that did to me? Something in his face shifted at the question. Not enough, but enough. Leah looked away first, because if she didn't, she might say the thing that would ruin her, that she had loved him long enough for it to become part of her pride. That every time he called her family, something inside her stood there and bled quietly. Before either of them could speak again, the balcony door opened. Raphael stepped out. One glance at their faces told him enough to choose bluntness. Boss, Fiore saw. Dante turned. Saw what? Raphael's expression didn't move. You crossing the room, her with Mercer, the scene. Leah went cold. Dante asked, and? He asked who she was. The silence after that answer was its own warning. Raphael added, I told him nothing. But he noticed her, and he noticed you. Leah looked from one man to the other. What does that mean? Neither answered fast enough. That was answer enough. Through the glass, the ballroom looked different now. Not elegant. Exposed. Dante's face hardened into the version the city feared. Keep him away from her. Raphael nodded once and disappeared back inside. Leah turned on Dante at once. This is exactly what I meant. His eyes met hers. I know. No, you don't. Her voice was low now, more dangerous for it. Your feelings never stay feelings. They become walls, orders, men with guns at doors, rooms that go silent. You walked across one floor tonight and now I'm not a woman at a gala anymore. I'm a weakness. Dante's face didn't change. You were never a weakness. Then what was all of this? She threw one hand toward the ballroom. What was that? His voice dropped. A mistake. That stopped her. Not because it fixed anything. Because she had expected denial, defense, control. Not that. Leah stared at him. You mean I was a mistake? Dante's eyes sharpened. No, that room was. He looked back through the glass. You should go home. Leah let out a breath that hurt coming out. You agree too fast. I'm not arguing that point. You never do when the conversation becomes about what your world costs. That hit. She saw it. For a second she thought he might say something that mattered. Something real enough to pull the night in one direction or the other. Instead, Raphael came back out and said, Mercer wants to know if she's leaving with him. The pause that followed could have split open stone. Dante answered without looking at Raphael. No, Leah turned on him. You don't answer for me. Dante still didn't look away from the ballroom. He is not taking you anywhere. The pure arrogance of that should have made her walk back inside just to defy him. Instead, she thought of Fiore, of the men who watched powerful people for signs of weakness, of the way the room had shifted the second Dante lost control. Julian was not built for that world. Elena wasn't either. Leah hated how fast the truth landed. Dante was right about the danger, and she hated him for being right in the same night he had lost the right to tell her anything. She said, Tell him thank you. Tell him I'm leaving alone. Raphael flicked a glance at Dante. Leah's voice sharpened. Raphael, that moved him. Of course. When he went back inside, Dante said, You're coming with me. She almost laughed from the force of his certainty. No, you are not leaving alone tonight. Watch me. Leah, no. She stepped around him toward the door. You already did enough. His hand closed around her wrist before she reached it. Not hard, not cruelly, but with the grip of a man who didn't know how to separate fear from possession once both had taken hold. Leah looked down at his hand and then back up at his face. Take your hand off me. Dante let go at once. That somehow made it worse, because it reminded her that even like this, he was still choosing his actions. Every line crossed. Every word. She opened the door and walked back inside. The room noticed again. Not openly. Not enough to save her dignity from the feeling of being watched all the same. Elena touched her arm the second she got close enough. Leah, I'm fine. No, you're not. Julian stood as she approached. There was no pity in his face, which made her like him more. Do you want me to take you home? Leah almost said yes, just because yes would have felt like reclaiming something. Then she thought of Fiore, thought of the look on Raphael's face, thought of the way danger spreads when powerful men make private feelings public. I can't, she said softly. Julian understood too quickly. Because of him? Leah glanced away. Because of his world. Julian went quiet for a moment. Then I won't make tonight harder than it already is. The kindness in that nearly undid her. I'm sorry, she said. He shook his head. You don't owe me that. Elena, watching them both, looked furious on Leah's behalf and frightened at the same time. Call me, she whispered. No matter how late, Leah nodded. Julian touched her hand once in farewell, lightly, barely. Across the room, Dante saw it. Even from 20 feet away, she felt the change in him. Julian let go almost at once and stepped back. Good night, Leah. Then he was gone. Elena left too, but only after squeezing Leah's wrist hard enough to say everything her mouth couldn't safely risk in a room full of Ravieri eyes. That left Leah alone for all of 5 seconds. Dante crossed the ballroom again. Not as fast this time. More dangerous for it. He stopped in front of her and said, We're leaving. Leah wanted to fight. Wanted to throw every ugly truth in his face in front of the whole room. Wanted to ask whether he understood that one confession made under anger did not repair years of being held close and denied. Instead, she looked toward the far side of the ballroom, where Fiore stood near a painting pretending to admire it, while clearly watching everything. Raphael stood a few feet behind Dante, with the expression of a man already calculating roots and consequences. Fine, Leah thought. Not because he told me to. Because I hate that he's right. Fine, she said aloud. Dante held out a hand. She ignored it and walked past him. The car ride home was quiet for the first few minutes, which in a car that dark and that expensive felt less like peace and more like something braced for impact. Raphael sat in front with the driver. Dante sat across from Leah in the rear, one arm along the door, one hand open on his knee, his face cut into hard lines by passing city lights. Leah finally said, If you start with, I told you so, I will open this door while the car is moving. Raphael made a sound that might have been a laugh if he had been a different man. Dante ignored him. You should not have come without security. There it is. Leah turned toward the window. I was wondering how long it would take. It's not a joke. No, Dante. Tonight was not a joke. That's exactly my problem. His voice dropped. My problem is that you still don't understand what that room became the moment Fiore noticed you. Leah looked back at him. Then explain it to me. Dante's gaze held on hers. A woman beside me can become a message. A woman beside you. She repeated it slowly. That's what I am tonight? His eyes flashed. Don't do that. Do what? Twist my words when you know exactly what I mean. Leah laughed once, breathless and bitter. No, I don't. That's the point. I don't know what I am to you. Some days I'm your aunt's responsibility. Some days I'm the estate manager. Some days I'm family. Tonight I'm, what, yours? The word landed hard in the car. Raphael looked even more firmly out the windshield. Dante's jaw tightened. You want honesty? Leah turned toward him fully now. I wanted honesty years ago. The city moved across his face in bands of shadow and white light. When he finally spoke, his voice was very quiet. Because tonight I watched another man touch you and wanted to tear the room apart. Leah's heartbeat stumbled. Dante continued before she could recover. Because I heard you laugh with him and hated that I wasn't the reason. Because I told myself for years that distance was the decent choice, and tonight I realized I was 1 second from breaking that choice in front of half the city. Leah's throat tightened. Then why make it at all? The car turned through the front gates of the estate. Dante did not answer until the gravel quieted under the tires. Because you were 18 when I first wanted to kiss you, he said, and already living under my aunt's protection. Because she trusted me not to poison your life with what I am. Because I knew exactly what my name does to people close to me. Because like a sister was the safest lie I had. Every word hit harder than the last. Leah forgot the house was right outside the window. Forgot Raphael. Forgot everything except the shape of that confession, and the way it reached back through years she had spent trying to hate one sentence enough to survive it. The car stopped. Nobody moved. Leah said very softly, You called me a lie. Dante's eyes stayed on hers. No, I called the sentence one. She had no defense left for that. Not one that sounded like anger anyway, so she asked the only question still big enough to matter. And now? Dante leaned toward her just enough that the air changed. Now I tell you the truth. Leah's pulse was so loud she could hear it in her ears. Outside, the driver stepped out. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck 11. Dante said, You are not my sister. The words passed through her like fire. Then, because after all this he still had the power to make things worse, he added, You never were. Leah forgot to breathe. Every year between 17 and now seemed to gather in the dark space of that stopped car. Every moment he had looked too long and then stepped back. Every time he had noticed something small and acted like it meant nothing. Every time she had hated herself for loving a man who handed her a lock and called it protection. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Then why did you let me live inside that lie? Dante looked at her with something raw enough to frighten her more than anger ever had. Because once I told the truth, I would want everything. For one reckless second, Leah thought he might kiss her. Then the rear door opened. Raphael stood there, one hand on the frame, phone in the other, his face colder than before. Trouble had arrived faster than either of them got what they wanted. "Boss," he said quietly, "we have a problem." Dante didn't look away from Leah right away. "What?" Raphael's gaze flicked to her once, then back. "Fiore's men followed the car, and there's already a photo moving through half the city. You with her with Mercer. People are talking." Leah went still. Raphael continued, voice hard now, "And Belladonna's brother just called." The name landed wrong even before Leah understood why. Dante's expression closed. "What did he say?" Raphael hesitated for half a beat. "He wanted to know why you made a public scene over another woman." Leah felt the floor disappear under her. She looked at Dante. "Another woman?" He met her eyes and said nothing. That silence was answer enough to cut. Leah stared at him, all the pieces turning sharp at once. The quiet expectations around men like Dante, the polished names at events like tonight. The women powerful families placed beside men like him and called it strategy. The reason Bianca had once looked at Leah with sad understanding when she was too young to read it properly. "There was someone," Leah said. Dante stepped out of the car. "Leah, there was someone." His face hardened in the night air. "Not like that." She laughed once, thin and broken and furious. "Do men in your world always say that after the damage is done?" Raphael stepped back as Leah got out too. The warm night felt suddenly cold against her skin. Dante said, "Listen to me." "No." Leah shook her head slowly. "You don't get to confess one truth and hide another in the same breath. There is nothing between me and Belladonna." Then why did her brother call? His silence lasted only a second. It was enough. Leah felt humiliation rise hotter than anger. "You called me a sister in private and let another woman stand in public where I was never allowed to." Dante took one step toward her. "That's not what this was." "Then what was it?" He didn't answer quickly enough. Raphael's phone buzzed again. He checked the screen and his expression changed. "Boss." Dante turned sharply. "What now?" Raphael looked first at him, then at Leah. "Fiore sent a message." No one moved. Raphael read from the screen, voice flat. "If she matters enough to make Dante Ravieri forget his own lie, then she matters enough to take from him." The words landed in the night like a gunshot. Leah looked at Dante. Dante looked at the message, and in that terrible, silent second, both of them understood the same thing. The lie was broken. The city had seen it break, and whatever came next was going to cost far more than either of them had been ready to pay. Part 2. Leah looked from Raphael's phone to Dante's face and understood, with a cold clarity that almost hurt more than fear, that the night had changed shape again. It was no longer only about jealousy. No longer only about the lie he had hidden behind for years. No longer only about the fact that he had looked at another man touching her and broken in public. Now other eyes had moved in. Other hands, other intentions, and that was exactly what she had feared. Dante took the phone from Raphael, read the message once, and handed it back without a word. The stillness in him was worse than anger. She had seen him furious before. Furious meant heat. This looked like ice. "Lock the east road," he said. "Double the cameras on the lower gate. No car leaves until I say so." Raphael nodded once. "Already moving. Julian Mercer. Home. Watched for now. Elena? Safe. She reached her apartment 20 minutes ago." Something inside Leah unclenched so suddenly she almost lost balance. "She's safe?" Raphael looked at her directly. "Yes." "Did Fiore's men go near her?" "Not tonight. Not tonight." The words did not comfort her as much as they were supposed to. Dante turned toward the front doors. "Carlo stays on the grounds. No guest staff after midnight. I want the whole house quiet." Raphael went at once. That left Leah alone with Dante in the front hall. The marble floor too bright, the lamps too soft, the silence too expensive for what had just entered it. "You don't get to do that," she said. Dante stopped with one hand on the study door. "Do what?" "Turn me into a security problem and start giving orders like I'm a locked room you need to manage." His face did not change, but she saw the tension in his shoulders. "Fiore made you a target." "No," Leah shook her head. "You made me visible." The sentence landed. Good, she thought. Let it. Dante looked at her for a long moment and said, "Yes." That surprised her enough that she almost said nothing. Almost. "Then stop acting like this happened to you alone." He stepped back from the door and turned fully toward her. "You think I'm doing that? I think you're doing what you always do." Her throat tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "You feel something, and then you build walls around it. Men, locks, orders, silence. You never ask what I want. You only decide what keeps me under your control. Under my protection." Leah gave a short, bitter laugh. There, that word again. "You really don't hear the difference, do you?" Something flashed through his eyes. Hurt, anger, maybe both. "You think I want to control you. I think you don't know when the line ends." For 1 second, he looked as if he wanted to argue. Then he didn't. That frightened her more than if he had raised his voice. Leah took a breath and forced herself to say the thing that mattered. "I am not denying what you felt tonight. I saw it." Her chest tightened at the memory of the ballroom, of his face when he saw Julian's hand near her back. "But jealousy is not a right. Dante, feeling something does not make my life yours to rearrange." He took that without interrupting. Good. Because she was tired of men understanding women only after they had already wounded them. "You spent years keeping me near," she said more quietly. "You noticed everything. You remembered things I didn't say out loud. You made me feel—" She stopped herself before the wrong word came. "Before anything too soft got into the room and weakened what she needed to hold. And then you called me like a sister whenever it mattered." Her eyes burned now. "Do you understand what that did?" Dante's face changed in the smallest possible way. "Yes," she thought, "you do. You just hated the answer." He said, "I do now. That is very late." Yes, again that honesty. Again that infuriating, brutal lack of defense. It made it harder to hate him cleanly. Leah hated that too. The study door opened behind him. Raphael stood there with 2 phones, and the expression of a man who had no interest in the emotional weather of anyone rich enough to ruin his evening. "Belladonna's brother is calling again." Dante did not turn. "Ignore him." Raphael's gaze flicked once to Leah. "He says if the rumor isn't corrected by morning, he'll correct it himself." Dante's face went cold. Let him try. That should have alarmed Leah less than it did. Instead, the name came back to her in a sharper way now. Belladonna, a family, a woman maybe. An arrangement left standing somewhere in the dark while Dante had the nerve to confess want to Leah in a car. She folded her arms. "No." Both men looked at her. "No one is going to talk in half sentences around me," she said. "Not tonight. Not after this. Who is Belladonna?" Raphael did what most wise men did in the Ravieri house when Leah's tone got that calm. He stepped back and let Dante answer. Dante held her gaze. "A family, I assumed that. One of the older ones, respectable in public, useful when needed." Leah's mouth tightened. "And the woman?" His jaw moved once before he answered. "Vittoria Belladonna." The name sat between them. Leah waited. Dante did not speak again quickly enough. So she asked, "Was there an arrangement?" "No." "Was there pressure?" His silence lasted less than a second. That was enough. Leah closed her eyes once. "Of course. It was never accepted." "That isn't the same thing as never existing." She looked at him with tired disbelief. "You really thought I wouldn't mind hearing this after tonight?" His voice dropped. "It meant nothing to me." She laughed softly, without humor. "Everything means something when a woman is the one left outside the choice." Raphael shifted his weight just enough to suggest he regretted having ears. Dante said, "Leah, no." She shook her head. "You don't get to use my name like that and turn this gentle. Not when you let me stand in your house for years under one lie while the world held space for a different woman beside you. There was never another woman beside me." She looked at him hard. "Then why wasn't there room for truth? That shut him up." "Good," she thought again, though the victory felt terrible in her chest. Raphael, who clearly understood the need for oxygen in a room before people drowned in it, said, "Elena's online too. She wants Leah." Leah moved at once. Dante reached out on instinct, then stopped himself before touching her. That tiny hesitation did not go unnoticed. She took the phone from Raphael and went into the study. Elena answered before Leah could even say hello. "Are you all right?" "That depends who you ask." "Not funny." Elena's voice was shaky under the anger. "Do you know what kind of night I've had because you attract lunatics in tailored suits?" Leah let out a breath she had been holding since the car. "Raphael said you were safe." "I am, mostly. And before you panic, no, nobody touched me. But 2 men in a black sedan sat outside the building for 10 minutes after I got home, so your terrifying world has officially ruined ordinary streets for me. I'm sorry." Elena went quiet for 1 second. "Don't apologize for his chaos. Just tell me you're not alone with it." Leah looked through the glass panel in the study door. Dante stood in the hall with Raphael, both men speaking low. Even from a distance, she could tell when Dante's attention shifted back toward her. "No," Leah said. "I'm not alone. That doesn't comfort me the way it should." Leah almost smiled. "It doesn't comfort me either." Elena softened then. "What happened after I left?" Leah sat down on the edge of Dante's desk because her knees had started to feel untrustworthy again. She told Elena some of it: the car, the confession, the message, Belladonna. She left out only the way Dante had looked when he said he would want everything, because some things still felt too alive to share. When she finished, Elena said, "He waited too long." "Yes, but it was real." Leah looked at the dark wood under her hand. "Yes, that's the problem, isn't it?" Leah shut her eyes. "Yes," Elena sighed. Listen to me carefully. If he loves you, let him prove he knows the difference between wanting you and respecting you. And if he doesn't, leave. Not tomorrow. Not after another year of excuses. Leave. Leah swallowed. I know. No, you know and still stay. That's not the same thing. That one hit. Because Elena knew her too well. Leah looked again through the glass. Dante had turned now, back half facing the study door, like even his body did not know how to stand fully away from her. I'll call you in the morning, Leah said. You'd better. When the call ended, Leah stayed where she was for a moment longer than necessary, holding the dead phone and the silence and the shape of Elena's advice. If he loves you, let him prove he knows the difference. That was it, wasn't it? Not whether he felt enough. Clearly he did. Not whether she still loved him. Clearly she did, which was its own private humiliation. The question was whether he could love her without reducing her, without hiding her, without making her pay for his fear in a smaller life. When Leah stepped back into the hall, Raphael looked up first. Dante looked second, but harder. Elena? He asked. Safe. Something in his shoulders eased. Leah noticed it and hated that she noticed it. Raphael checked the time, then one of his phones. I should do another perimeter round. He left without waiting for permission. That left the two of them alone again. Dante said, You should sleep. Leah almost laughed. That sounds absurd to you too, right? He looked tired now in a way she had never seen before. Not physically. More like whatever held him together had spent too much of itself already. You need rest. And you need honesty. Apparently we're both unlikely to get what we need tonight. A shadow of something passed through his face. Not a smile. Too worn for that. Leah folded her arms. I am not staying hidden upstairs while you decide what happens to me. He did not answer right away. That worried her. Finally he said, What do you want? The question itself nearly knocked the breath from her, because he so rarely asked. Because when powerful men start asking instead of deciding, it usually means the ground under them has finally shifted. Leah held his gaze. I want choice. He said nothing. I want you to understand that if Fiore notices me, that does not turn me into an object that needs to be moved from room to room. Her voice stayed steady now because she had finally reached the center of what mattered. I want you to stop using fear as an excuse to take my decision away. Dante's face hardened slightly. And if your decision gets you hurt, that is not your answer to everything. It is when I can't lose you. The words came too quickly, too unguarded. Both of them heard it. Leah's pulse jumped. Dante's jaw tightened as if he already regretted letting that sentence out whole. She could have used it then. Could have stepped closer to that opening and demanded more. Instead, she said the harder thing. You don't get to say that and then lock me in a room. He held her stare. Good, she thought. Stay there. Feel the shape of it. Finally, he said, Then tell me what you choose. Leah almost did not believe him. And because she didn't, she answered carefully. I choose not to hide like shame. Something hard flickered in his expression at that word. Shame. Yes, she said, seeing it land. That's what hiding feels like after a night like this. His voice lowered. You think I'm ashamed of you. I think you were never brave enough before tonight to let anyone see what I was to you. That one went in deep. He looked away first. That almost never happened. When he looked back, he said, You will not be moved upstairs. The east wing stays active. Carlo outside. Raphael on rotation. Extra watch at the lower garden entrance. His tone had changed. Not into an order. Into decision shaped around what she asked for. But you don't walk the grounds alone. Not tonight. Leah studied him. This, she thought, was what the difference felt like. Small. Fragile. Real. Fine, she said. He nodded once. Then neither of them moved. The silence should have been awkward. It wasn't. It was too full, Leah said. Was there ever a moment you were going to tell me? His eyes lifted fully to hers. About Belladonna. No, her throat tightened. About me. The answer took too long and not long enough at the same time. I don't know, he said. That honesty hurt more than a beautiful lie would have. I knew when I was still too old for it to be clean and too young to trust myself with it, he continued quietly. Then I told myself it would pass. He laughed once under his breath with no humor in it. Then it became part of the way I breathed. And after that? He stopped. After that, every version of the truth felt selfish. Leah looked at him for a long moment. You don't know much about women, do you? That startled the smallest real smile out of him. No, he said, not the important kind. She should have left then. Gone upstairs. Closed the door. Kept every remaining piece of herself behind wood and distance until morning. Instead, she asked, Did you ever think what the lie did to me? His face changed again. Not much, enough. Yes, he said. And you still kept using it. Yes. The pain of that was so clean it almost calmed her. Because at least it was true. Then maybe you should spend tonight thinking about that instead of where to station Carlo. That wiped the ghost of the smile away. Leah. She turned and went upstairs before he could say her name in that voice again and ruin what little strength she had left. Sleep did not come easily. At 2 a.m, she was still awake, sitting at the foot of the bed in one of Dante's old aunt's quilts and a plain white t-shirt, when headlights moved once across her curtains from the lower drive. By 3 she gave up and went to the window. Carlo stood near the east garden wall with one of the night guards. The grounds looked peaceful, the sort of peace that belonged only to rich houses and liars. At 3:30 there was another knock. Leah almost ignored it. Then Dante's voice came through the wood, low and careful. "I'm not coming in." She crossed the room and opened the door halfway. He stood there in the dim hall with no jacket, no tie, no weapon in sight. Just exhaustion, and that same terrible awareness of her that had never needed words to make itself known. "What?" she asked. He held out a mug, tea. Leah stared at it. "I didn't make it," he said. "Bellini did. She said if I came empty-handed you'd shut the door in my face." That nearly made her smile. Nearly. She took the mug. Dante looked at her, then down at the floor, then back. Julian Mercer texted Raphael. Leah's grip on the tea tightened. "Why?" "To ask if you were safe." She didn't know what to do with the small wave of emotion that brought. Gratitude, shame, relief, some mix of all three. Dante must have read something in her face because he said, "I didn't answer for you." Leah looked up sharply. His voice stayed level. Raphael sent him one line. "She is safe. That's all." That mattered more than it should have. More than a man like Dante would probably understand without being told. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once, but didn't leave. Leah waited. Finally he said, "I spoke to Belladonna's brother." That made her spine straighten. "And?" "I told him there will be no arrangement now or later, no sister, no cousin, no political convenience to save face." Leah's pulse moved once, hard under her skin. "And what did he say?" "That I should have made that clear earlier." She held his eyes. "He's right, yes." Again that honesty. Again that refusal to pretend he had not failed. Leah lifted the mug to hide how much it affected her. Dante looked at the closed door behind her. "You should know something else." She waited. "I didn't keep Belladonna outside my life because of strategy." His voice lowered. "I kept every woman outside my life because of you." The tea almost slipped in her hand. She looked up too quickly and found no performance in his face, no smoothness, no manipulation, just a man too tired to lie cleanly anymore. "That is not a fair thing to say at 3:30 in the morning." "I know. Then why say it?" He answered immediately. "Because you asked me to stop hiding." Leah had no ready defense for that, no sharp answer either. So she said the next truest thing. "Go downstairs, Dante." Pain crossed his face so quickly most people would have missed it. Then he nodded once and left. By morning, the house had changed. Not in structure, in mood. News travels faster than staff discipline. Leah felt it the second she went downstairs. Not open staring. Never that. But glances, silence that turned when she entered. One maid nearly dropped a stack of napkins. Carlo, usually loud before coffee, spoke as if the walls had grown ears overnight. Leah understood why. A photograph moving through the city mattered in Dante's world. A rumor attached to it mattered more. But what really altered the air was this. Everyone in the house had always suspected something. Last night, the outside world caught up. Mrs. Bellini set toast in front of Leah without asking and said, "Eat." Leah took the plate because some women know love best through command. "Where is he?" she asked. "Study, since 6. The older woman paused. "He has not shouted yet, which I find more worrying." Raphael appeared at the kitchen door before Leah could answer. "He wants you," Bellini muttered. "Of course he does." Leah rose slowly. "If this is another security plan." "It's not." That interested her enough to follow. The West study smelled like coffee, paper, and the kind of expensive stress only old families create. Dante stood by the window in a black shirt and dark slacks, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his phone so hard his knuckles showed white. He turned when she entered. For one moment they only looked at each other. Then he said, "The Morelli board moved tonight's donor dinner." Leah frowned. "To when?" "They didn't cancel it. They expanded it." She understood immediately. "Because of the rumor." "Yes." "Of course they did," Raphael, standing near the desk, added, "Fiore will be there, Belladonna too." Half the city is waiting to see what Dante does. Leah looked at Dante. And what does Dante plan to do? His gaze held hers. Not hide you. Something in her chest tightened. Raphael, who knew when to become furniture, looked very interested in a file folder. Dante continued, If you want to leave the estate today, I won't stop you. That surprised her more than anything since the ballroom. If you want to stay here and let me deal with it, and I'll do that too, but I won't shut you away and call it protection. His voice dropped. You were right tonight, and last night, and all the nights before that. Leah stood very still because the truth, once it comes, can leave a person without obvious movement. He went on. But if you choose to come to that dinner, then you do it beside me because you decide it, not because I drag you into another room. There it was. Choice. Real this time. Not clean, not easy, but real. Leah looked at Raphael. If I don't go, we protect the house. We keep things quiet. Fiore still talks, but not with your face in the room. And if I do? Raphael's gaze shifted to Dante before returning to her. Then the city stops guessing. Leah looked back at Dante. And you? His answer came without hesitation. Then I stop hiding. The words should have relieved her. Instead, they frightened her, because now the choice sat fully in her hands. This was what she had asked for. This was what justice actually felt like when it stopped sounding pretty and became responsibility. She looked toward the window. Morning light lay cold across the grounds. Somewhere outside, one of the gardeners was trimming the south hedges, as if the city were not waiting to see whether Dante Ravieri would deny, choose, or destroy. Leah said, I'll go. Raphael looked down at the file, wisely absent again. Dante did not move, but his whole body seemed to go stiller in response. You're sure? No. She looked at him directly. I'm choosing. Something in his expression changed at that word. Good, she thought. Hear it. The hours before the dinner moved too fast. Oh, Elena came by the estate at noon, furious, alive, and wearing sunglasses because apparently shock still allowed style. She hugged Leah hard enough to bruise, and then spent 10 full minutes insulting Dante to his face in the front hall, while he stood there and took it with the calm of a man who knew every word was earned. When Elena finally ran out of rage, she looked between them and said, If he embarrasses you again, I will set something on fire. That sounds reasonable, Leah said. Dante, to Leah's satisfaction, did not disagree. Julian sent one final message in the afternoon. No pressure, no drama, just, I hope you're all right. You deserve a night that belongs to you. Leah read it twice before putting the phone down. At 6:30 she dressed again, not for Dante, not for Fiore, not for the city waiting to watch, for herself. She chose black this time. Clean lines, no softness, no apology. She wore her hair down again because she liked it that way, and because no woman should have to make herself smaller to calm other people's feelings. When she came downstairs, Dante was already in the front hall. He turned, and the look on his face told her more clearly than any confession yet that she had been right to demand choice from a man like him, because all that fear and hunger and devotion in his eyes would have turned monstrous if he had not learned to stand still and let her walk toward him by her own will. You look beautiful, he said. No joke after it, no correction, no safety word. Leah let the sentence land. Thank you, she said. The donor dinner took place at a smaller private hall attached to the same foundation. All candles and sharp suits and old names pretending to care about art, while really caring about power. The moment Dante and Leah walked in together, the room changed. Not loudly, just enough. Eyes lifted. Conversations altered course. Belladonna's brother stiffened near the bar. Fiore smiled across the room with the kind of satisfaction only ugly men wore well. Leah felt Dante beside her, not touching, not steering, just there. Present. Coiled. Watching. Raphael moved behind them like a second shadow. The night did not wait long to sharpen. Belladonna's brother approached first, mid-30s, polished, expensive, with a face that had learned disappointment without ever learning humility. He gave Dante a tight nod and Leah a look too smooth to be kind. This is unfortunate, he said. Dante's voice stayed flat. For you, yes. The man's jaw shifted. My sister did not deserve public embarrassment. Leah spoke before Dante could. Then she should be grateful I'm not cruel enough to call lying to women a hobby. That made him blink. Good. Dante looked at her once, quickly, and something like pride moved across his face before he turned back to the other man. Leave. The brother held Dante's gaze 1 second too long, then did the smart thing and stepped away. Fiore arrived 5 minutes later. He was older than Dante, sleek where Dante was severe, with a smile too polished and eyes too empty. He looked like a man who had spent his whole life mistaking cruelty for intelligence. "So this is her," Fiore said. Dante's entire body changed by 1 degree. Leah felt it and stepped slightly forward before thinking better of it. Fiore noticed that too and smiled wider. "Interesting. I expected someone easier to hide." Leah met his eyes. "And I expected you to be uglier. Life disappoints us all." Raphael made a sound under his breath that might have been approval. Fiore laughed. "No wonder he forgot himself." Dante's voice went cold enough to frost glass. "Walk away." Fiore looked at Leah instead. "Do you know what men like him do when they finally admit a woman matters?" Leah answered before Dante could. "They usually say something foolish first." Fiore's smile thinned. "No, they either cage her or lose her." The sentence hung there. Leah heard Dante take 1 breath beside her. Then Dante said, quiet and final, "She isn't yours to threaten, and she isn't mine to cage." That changed the room. Not just Fiore's expression. Everything. The nearby conversations faded. A woman near the donor table stopped mid-sip. Belladonna's brother turned back from the bar. Even the Morelli chair standing near the auction easels seemed suddenly too interested in a flower arrangement. Fiore's smile vanished for the first time. "You're saying that in public?" Dante looked at Leah once. Only once, long enough to make sure. Then he faced the room, not just Fiore. And when he spoke, his voice carried. "I should have said it sooner." No one moved. Dante continued. "Leah is not my sister. She is not gossip. She is not leverage. And she is not a name for men in this room to use when they want to test me." The silence deepened. Leah felt her heart pounding so hard it almost hurt. Dante's gaze moved across the room and finally returned to her. "She is the woman I love." Then, and this mattered most, he added, "and if she chooses to stand beside me, then every person here will respect that choice." The room seemed to stop breathing. Leah forgot every prepared thought. Because this was what she had wanted and feared in equal measure. Not just claim, not just love. Choice spoken aloud, in public, before men who understood power better than tenderness, and would therefore notice the difference more clearly. Fiore's face hardened into something close to hate. "Careful, Dante. Public love makes a cleaner target." He moved then, fast, too fast for anyone not expecting it. One of his men from the far side cut toward Leah through the crowd, not with a gun, not stupidly, but with a knife small enough to hide and sharp enough to matter. The whole room exploded at once. Raphael hit the man from the side before the blade got within inches of her. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. Another bodyguard lunged. Leah stumbled backward and would have gone down if Dante had not caught her by the waist and pulled her behind him in one violent motion. The knife clattered across the floor. Fiore smiled once, thin and ugly, as if all he had wanted was proof that the room could still bleed. Then Dante moved. Not wildly, not with rage losing control, with it. He crossed the distance between them before Fiore could step back and hit him hard enough to send him into the edge of the donor table. The candles crashed. 2 guards moved, stopped when Raphael's gun appeared, and thought better of dying for a man like Fiore. Dante leaned down, one hand twisted in Fiore's jacket, and said something too low for the room to hear. Whatever it was, Fiore's face changed, not to pain, to understanding. Then Dante let him go and turned to Raphael. "Take him out." Raphael nodded once, not a man to explain the mechanics of doom in public. Within seconds, Fiore was no longer the center of the room. Dante was. He looked back at Leah, not to see if she was still there, to see if she was standing by choice. That was the difference. Leah straightened her dress with hands that shook only slightly and took 1 step toward him. The whole room saw it. Belladonna's brother looked away first. Good, Leah thought. Let him. The Morelli chair cleared his throat and attempted the impossible task of sounding social after attempted violence. "Perhaps we should—" Dante turned his head once. No one here saw anything except what I chose to say. The chair nodded too fast. Again, good. Later, much later, Leah would understand that the real climax of the night had not been the knife, not even Fiore's stupid smile. It had been the moment Dante had spoken love without turning it into ownership. The moment he said, "If she chooses to stand beside me," that was where everything changed. The rest came after. Fiore's men disappeared from the hall. Belladonna's family withdrew with whatever dignity they could still carry. The Morelli board suddenly became very respectful of Leah's presence. Raphael stayed close enough to kill anyone who misunderstood the evening, and through all of it, Dante did not touch Leah again until they were back in the car and alone behind dark glass. Only then did he take her hand, not claim it, take it, like a question. Leah let him. The estate was quiet when they returned. The staff had been sent to bed. Carlo did one perimeter lap and vanished into the side wing. Raphael stayed downstairs after delivering the final report. Fiore had been removed. His cars watched. His message answered in ways Leah did not ask to know. When Raphael finally left them in the west study, Dante and Leah stood in the same room where so many half-truths had started and ended. For a while, neither spoke. Then Leah said, "You almost got me killed." Dante did not defend himself. "Yes. You embarrassed me in public. Yes. You lied to me for years." His face tightened. "Yes." Leah looked at him. "And yet that might have been the first night you ever respected me properly." Something almost broke in his expression at that. "That's not praise," she added. "I know." She crossed the room slowly and stopped close enough to see the fatigue under his eyes. "You don't get forgiveness just because you finally told the truth." "I know. You don't get me just because you love me." At that, his gaze sharpened, not in anger, but in full attention. "No," he said quietly. "I get nothing you don't give." There it was again, the difference. Leah let herself feel it fully this time. All the years he had watched her too closely. All the times he had used one wrong sentence to keep himself moral and keep her wounded. All the nights she had gone to sleep angry because he had remembered her dinner and forgotten her dignity. None of it vanished. None of it should. But he had finally stepped into the only kind of love she could live with. The kind that asked. The kind that respected. The kind that chose openly and then waited to see if it would be chosen back. Leah said, "I'm not staying in this house because it's easy." He held her gaze. "Then stay because it's yours, if you want it." She blinked. Dante continued, slower now, like a man setting down the last of his weapons. "Not as obligation, not as Bianca's ghost, not as my lie. If you stay, it's because you choose what comes next." His voice lowered. "And if you leave, I don't stop you." That was the second most dangerous thing he had said to her, because sometimes freedom, when offered honestly, is more intimate than possession. Leah looked around the study, the desk, the lamps, the dark shelves, the room where he had made decisions about men, money, violence, loyalty, the room where he was now handing decision back to her. "I loved you for too long in silence," she said. He didn't move. "I hated myself for it some days. Other days I hated you. Most days I just worked and pretended competence was enough to cure anything." She took a breath. "So no, I'm not going to hear one confession, one public declaration, one dangerous night, and fall into your arms like I've been waiting politely for my reward." A shadow of a smile touched his mouth. "That would have felt unlike you." "Good." Her own mouth almost moved, but didn't fully. "Because what I want is harder than that. Tell me." "I want truth without hiding. I want respect when I disagree with you. I want my own room, my own work, my own life, and no more safe lies every time you get afraid." She held his eyes. "And if you love me, you do not get to use that love to make me smaller." Dante looked at her, as if the rest of the room had gone dark around those words. Then he said, "Done." She narrowed her eyes. "That was too easy." "It won't be easy." His voice turned rougher. "It'll be hard every day, but done anyway." That, more than anything else, finally made her smile. A small one. Real. The kind he had once seen from across a ballroom and almost lost his mind over. Dante noticed, of course. He noticed everything about her. Leah said, "You're not kissing me tonight." The disappointment on his face was so immediate, she had to look away to hide the dangerous warmth it brought. "Cruel," he said. "Justice," she corrected. That got a real laugh out of him. Low, tired, honest. And because she had waited too many years already, and would not spend another one pretending her body was less brave than her mouth, Leah stepped forward, rose onto her toes, and kissed his cheek instead. Dante went completely still. When she stepped back, his eyes were darker than before. That, he said quietly, was worse. She almost laughed. Good. He caught her hand then, not to stop her, just to hold it once. His thumb moved across her knuckles in one slow line that felt somehow more intimate than the kiss she had refused him. You were never my sister, he said. Leah held his gaze. I know. He gave her hand one last press. You were the woman I kept lying to myself about. This time she didn't look away. Then stop lying, she said. And because at last the night belonged a little more to her than to the men trying to define it, Leah Vale left the study by her own will, climbed the stairs to a room that was hers because she said it was, and slept for the first time in years without needing to shrink herself to survive the shape of love. By morning, Fiore's name had begun disappearing from polite conversations. By afternoon, half the city knew Dante Ravieri had chosen a woman no one had expected him to choose. By evening, that woman had already rewritten the terms under which she would be loved. And in the days that followed, when Dante learned to knock before entering her office, to ask instead of order, to sit in her kitchen and drink coffee he didn't like just to hear her tell him what she would and would not accept from him, the house changed too. Not because a powerful man had claimed a woman, because a strong woman had refused to be hidden, refused to be owned, and taught a dangerous man that loving her meant standing beside her freedom, not in front of it. That was the part worth keeping. That was the part that made the rest of it real.